I'm Julianne. I'm with the Southwest Compassionate Communities Network. I've had the privilege, the honour of supporting my dad to die at home, and that experience was a very profound one for me. And I'm really delighted to be able to have Joe and Stephen here to facilitate to be part of a conversation around what does it take, or I suppose looking at the whole area of supporting someone to die at home. Um, Dr. Stephen Ginsborg is a GP. He has over 50 years experience in supporting people. And he's based in the Northern Beaches of Sydney. And we also have Dr. Joe Doran, who's a palliative care specialist with over 30 years experience based in Queensland. So we've got a lot of knowledge in the room. And I'm sure that there's also a lot of knowledge and experience amongst everyone else that's joining us here today. So we hope to tap into that as much as we can with the time that we've got. So thank you for being here. I would like to start with an acknowledgement of country, and Stephen will be offering that for us today.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. I acknowledge that we meet today on Aboriginal land, always was and always will be, and I pay my respect to elders past, present, and emerging. And I also acknowledge that there are many customs around dying and grieving in our multicultural society. First Nations cultures have survived on this continent for over 60,000 years, and prior to 1788, people were in better health than by most of today's indicators of our health now in 2025. One of the ways that enable First Nations families and communities to thrive in life and death are social structures based on self and mutual care and a sense of country. We have much to learn from this in our current social choices for addressing social isolation and building connection, and in our compassionate communities.
Thank you, Stephen. If everyone would like to, we'd like to use the chat today as we go through. If you have, if you'd like to put in where in Australia, what country you're calling in from, that would be wonderful. Also, feel free to use the chat during this session to ask questions, to perhaps share some experience or thoughts as things flow along. I'll be monitoring that and using that to help facilitate the conversation with Stephen and Joe. So let's get started. And we titled this actual session's title, Dying at Home, is it really a lucky dip? So I want to put that to Stephen and Joe to start with in terms of why is it a lucky dip? What's happening here?
Well, age over beauty. I'll go first. Have a go. Um, I'm I'm 77 this year, and I suppose nothing I say. My biology teacher taught me that if you ever see anything in biology that's a straight line, they're lying to you. So what I might be saying is not necessarily the answer to everything. It's just a few thoughts. And I suppose it falls into the area of advanced care planning as to whether something's going to be a luck event or whether it's going to be intentional. Mm. And there's the adage, we plan for birth, why don't we plan for death? So how do we find the best way to plan? I'm now going to give a little Irish joke that I probably won't tell very well because I don't tell jokes very well, but it's that someone is lost in the countryside and they bump into a farmer who, in an Irish accent that I won't try and imitate. The man says, I want to get to Dublin. And the farmer says, well, it's not so much where you're going, it's more where you're starting from.
Mhm.
And much of what we do, I think, in advanced care planning is based where we're trying to get, which in Australia is hospital.
Mm.
It's an assumption pretty much that we will want to know whether we want to have CPR or all of the other aspects to dying. And as Professor Alan Kelleher says, dying is a social event with a medical component, not a medical event with a social component. So my approach is that really we need to start with conversations in community, and that's where we start from.
Stephen, can I interrupt you there?
Absolutely. No, this is a conversation Joe and I
Yeah, I know
start all the time.
Stephen and I interrupt each other all the time, so please don't think of it as rudeness. But so, Stephen, I'm going to say there's a lucky dip quality to this because of the services that are available to you. So I'm the big bad hospital doctor at the moment, and I'm going to think from a services perspective about how someone is able to die at home. And the services that you have available to you are very much, we talk about this postcode lottery. It's very much dependent on where you live, as much as it's dependent on your planning. Would you agree with that, Stephen, or do you see it
I think
differently?
in terms of the services, that's definitely so. I mean,
Yeah.
I was speaking to some people up the North Coast, and 50% of the people in their catchment area die at home.
Yeah. And do we know why? Do we know why that is?
Because their services are very well organised and well funded, I presume, and they've got plenty of the services to provide. I suppose coming as I do from a community approach, I go
Yeah.
more for the services are an add-on
Yeah.
and a very convenient and important add-on.
Yeah.
But what enables people to die at home, from what I see,
Yeah.
and home being maybe residential aged care facility or a hospice, but if it's home, it will be how many people they have from their network, call it a network, how many people they have to help. Because we know the 95-5 rule is that if you're anywhere in a hospital or aged care facility, 5% of your time is spent with services, nurses, or the like, and 95% of your time is spent either alone or with your cat or dog or with the television. And that's not feasible for death. It's not feasible ever. But if you don't have a community around you, it makes it very hard to have a good death at home.
So you're saying, Stephen, that services you think are quite periphery. When I say services, I mean like healthcare services, not you're saying they're quite periphery to dying at home.
I think they're essential in certain situations.
Yeah.
If the only issue is that the person needs to be turned all the time, then you don't need services for that, because any able-bodied person could be taught how to do that in 20 minutes. But if you need skilled nursing, that may be available from a nurse in the community. Many retired nurses, many nurses are getting out of the system at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like to come and help. And many people have nurses in their social network. If it's a case of doing something technical like a driver, where you put drugs in intravenously or no, subcutaneously, then yes, you need someone to set that up and to deal with the problems. But they will only be there for 5% of that person's time.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think the community understands this?
No, I think death literacy is extremely poor. We know that health literacy isn't so great. Otherwise, people would not be getting sick in the way that they do. The social determinants of health tell us that. But I'm very optimistic that we can, and that's one of the purposes of CCOs, is to act as a conduit for the knowledge that hopefully we can spread. I like to start, like the Irishman, I like to start at the beginning, and in order to get that group of people, and I think people need 5 people. We all need 5 people who've got our back, and I'm using that expression, "who's got my back," because it's common language. It's not medical, it's social. People often will say it, perhaps not as often as they should, because if some people say, "Oh, I've got 5 people," absolutely, we meet up, we have dinner, it's reciprocal. I've got your back, you've got my back. If you're not well or time of need, anything from birth to death, perinatal, whatever it is. But I think if you're dying at home, you need a minimum of 10 people. People will be unwell or they'll be working, and everyone's got a skill. So for some people, it might be that they've learned how to help turn someone in bed. For someone else, it might be dealing with what sends people to hospital often from community is the washing, the sheets. We had a very good MP locally who said, well, if that's what's sending people to hospital because they can't keep up with the sheets and why don't we hand over a little bit of the hospital laundry? Simple solutions like that, and people would then drop the dirty washing off and they'd pick up clean sheets, and that enabled them. It's a real community action. I mean, sometimes someone's got an 8-kilo washing machine and they say, well, I'll do that. I don't want to have anything to do with the care part. It's not me. Don't want to be handling. It's a very experienced palliative care nurse said there's 2 lots of people in community, those that can deal with body fluids and those that can't. We all are honest and say, no, I'll sit and talk, or I'll sit and hold a hand. And then there's intergenerational. The kids are often such an important part of this.
So going back to the lucky dip.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting in the Gold Coast. I'm in this lovely, great big university hospital, and I've seen 3 people this morning, elderly people who can't go home because there is no social support, Stephen. And I worry, and I think this is true of lots of places, that people move here looking for, warm weather and a lifestyle, but then get disconnected from families. And we see a lot of people who just don't have families here or haven't actually made those relationships.
Totally.
And I think they really might not have 5 to 10 people that they can call on. And so, I was just talking to this older lady this morning, and they don't want to bother people. They don't want to call people in. It sounds like a lovely nirvana, but I don't know that it's actually. Is it true in this day and age? And I'm happy for anyone to pitch in from the audience or in the chat. I can't see the chat, Julianne, so I don't know if there's questions coming in, but I think
the Mars work suggests that you can get enough people to enable them not to have to go to hospital. That's the Connector program.
Yeah, which is great. Look, first sign of trouble, I'm calling Samar. Don't you worry, Stephen. She'll be coming around doing my sheets, that's for sure.
It's surprising. You speak to social workers, it's surprising how often they can make it happen.
Yeah.
One wonderful social worker said to me, there's always something in the larder.
It's interesting. If
that metaphor comes across clearly, but knock on next door, and the neighbor will often say, yes, she always says she doesn't need anything, or he doesn't need anything, but I'd love to go and help. And quite quickly, I find, working in community, that people come, and more than that, once they've had the experience of helping at a death, they will come up, when one has the conversations afterwards during the grieving period, they'll say, if you know anyone who needs help, I'm on for it, because that was one of the most amazing experiences of my life.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? Borne out. I mean, death literacy is such an awful term.
It is an awful term.
It sounds so fancy, and honestly, the first time I heard it, I thought it was about Shakespeare, and I thought it was about all the people who died in tragedies in Shakespeare, because that's what it sounded like to me. So I really, that's just a little insight into how simple I am. But I wish there was a better term, Stephen. And I look at the Death Literary Index, and it's such a useful, it's so useful, though, to look at those questions. And I don't know if people are familiar with this and think, well, actually, how do I know about this? And it's like the world's most dire pub quiz in a way, all these questions about attitudes and practical stuff, but also things that you need to think about when someone's dying at home. It's so useful. So if you actually haven't seen the Death Literacy Index, and I'm probably preaching to the choir here, it's very, very useful. I know in our Dying to Know Day that we had recently, I left lots of those on the tables and they all went, which was great. So I think, yeah. Samar, you're going to say something?
Well, since you mentioned me,
yes, okay.
Something. I'd like to think of the southwest of Western Australia similar to the Gold Coast, which is really nice. And you've been there and you know what I mean. So even in the southwest of Western Australia, we do have people like in the Gold Coast who basically are completely disconnected from their families, social isolation, all that stuff for the elderly people. So what we have done, and I think a lot of you would know that, is the Compassionate Connector program. And that was really well taken because these people were in the too hard basket for the health service. I mean, they have no way of helping them except putting them in a nursing home, right?
Yes.
When somebody can look after them, and they really want to be at home. And they didn't have any inner networks to look after them. They may have had kids, but they are in the Gold Coast, for instance, not in Bunbury.
Yeah.
And so then these wonderful compassionate connectors try to, develop those circles of cares around those people, home alone people. And they've done really a marvelous job by getting people from the community to want to be their friends, to be part of their social networks.
Yeah.
And that's what's happened. I mean, we can create sort of externally facilitated networks for those people who don't have one. And we've proved that through the research trial that we've done in the Southwest. And they stayed on, as their friends, of course, until they died. And if they had family carers, they stayed on as friends of the family carer through the bereavement stage. So it's just really one community-led solution to what we can do. Of course, there are a lot as well happening, but that's just our experience here in the Southwest. And, the rest of the story. We even reduced hospital admissions. We reduced length of stay. Just by the sheer act that these people have got friends now in the community and that they're not doing all these social admissions to the hospitals. Of course, some of them are very valid admissions, but, in general, that's what we found out. And, of course, it's all published if anybody is happy to look at the details.
Yeah, thank you, Samar. Yeah, we're all going to move to Bunbury now.
Well,
what I'm saying, get a connector program in the Gold Coast. Don't move to
I can all move over here,
it doesn't have to be called as such. I mean, the communities have been doing this, and particularly some cultural, non-standard Aussie.
Yeah, no, it's a Western phenomenon, isn't it? How we look after our elderly and our frail. It is.
Ever since the Industrial Revolution, people have been moving away from being at home. They commute and they're not as available. But if anyone who doesn't know about Frome, Frome, in southwest England, it's known as the town that beat loneliness. And they have achieved amazing things. I mean, this is we're basically talking about what Britain created a minister for loneliness.
Yeah.
Talking about loneliness at heart, but this is the subject, and it's to me, it's one of the main social determinants of health, health and death, living and dying and grieving, and it's not rocket science. It's something that's why I quite like using that thing. Who's got my back? It's not so different to, when someone meets someone else, they say, "How are you?" I mean, we all say, "How are you?" Then we get sometimes just a bland response, but sometimes people will share with you. And then we've got a normal human response. So asking someone who's got your back, that's in the common language. And then you're starting a conversation. It's not like an advanced care plan, which is more like an interrogation with all those questions. You're talking about the death literacy index, but the other, it's an interrogation, and it happens too late. So when you say that your lovely old person this morning who came in, there was no way they could go to. Of course, there was no way, because they're starting too late. The earlier this conversation is started, the more chance you will have to be able to stay at home, and where home is the place where you feel safe. I mean, I suppose if you ask,
which is hospital for a lot of people, Stephen.
Absolutely.
Just
No, I was about to say, in our culture, hospital has become the safe place. As you know, I'm sure your hospital is great and provides excellent,
I can't complain.
No, you can't complain. But some people
just to say,
no, I still would rather be at home, because you can't have that same feeling. But I agree, you have to feel safe.
I think people have this default that hospital is safe, but I use the analogy that going to hospital, you step over that line, and whether you are aware or not, you are suddenly in a foreign country. You're in a different time zone. Hospital time makes no sense to anyone whatsoever. 5 minutes turns into 5 hours, turns into tomorrow. There's a language that's different. You hand over your power. You hand over, I remember this lady having to show everyone her bottom, and it's just like, well, I said, your modesty's gone out the window, but your dignity's still intact. It's just, hospitals are not a safe place to be, not a great place to die. Sometimes they absolutely are the right place to die, absolutely. But for a lot of people, it's not the ideal, and we know the statistics, don't we? So most of us will die of a chronic illness with a predictable quality to it, and that our death will somehow be foretold, that there will be an expectation that we will die. So it's still surprising how many people do not actually plan for that, or have not had discussions with their family about what they do and don't want.
Well, it's our fault as doctors. We're the ones to blame, because
not me, Stephen, not me.
Oh, no,
your fault,
not you.
Not mine.
No, it's all on my shoulders.
Thank you very much.
But no, we've become a medicalized society, and so
we have. We have, we know this, isn't it? Death has become a medical event, as if people have read the Lancet Commission on the value of death. It's just like one of the most important pieces of work I've seen in the last 10 years, and how death has value, and how that we are trying to shy it away. We are trying to ignore it. I mean, look at the amount of money that goes into looking younger now. The amount of money that, if that's not death denial, I don't know what is. And just that whole concept of it, or it's nothing to do with me. And I think that, you started off talking about planning, Stephen, and I think that is contributing to the lucky dip of whether you've thought about these things. Because if you haven't thought about these things, they really might not go your way. You really might not get what you want and what you expect. as you're approaching the end of your life.
Totally.
Yeah.
We plan for so many things. I mean, we take out insurance. We we make so many plans, but the one taboo area, and there's discussion about whether taboo is the right word to use, but I think everyone understands the taboo area is death and dying and grieving. And it's we're not going to change that. All we can do is it's like, we can come up with another model alongside that taboo when people say, oh, it's morbid to talk about. And indeed, some cultures you don't talk about it, but it's interesting that in those cultures there's often a lot of support. It's like almost it doesn't need to be talked about because it's just going to happen. It's going to happen in a way that people feel safe.
Stephen, I'm going to interrupt. Sorry about that. I just wanted to
Sorry?
Can you, Stephen?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to pause there, and because what I've been hearing you and Joe speak about very much is about the importance of caregiving networks, in particular, Stephen, you're highlighting that, and the planning ahead. But I'm also hearing that there is a role for, in that caregiving network, there's a role for services as well as obviously each and every one of us as members of the community. I suppose before we open up to the broader group for questions, and Terry, I'm acknowledging that you're got your hand up there and you'll be number one. Is maybe could you share, I suppose, an experience where all of the things have aligned and somebody actually had a good death at home, and what did that actually look like or teach you? Because I think for us to actually also have examples where we show what is possible is really important. Would either of you be happy to offer something up, an experience that, Joe, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. Well, as it turns out, the person didn't die at home. So this was a young person, I'll call her Judy, who was only 23. Horrible cancer that affected her lower back and hip and affected her ability to walk. Very, very painful, a very rare tumor that was not amenable to treatment. She was in hospital because her pain control was incredibly difficult and challenging for me. And she started to feel safe in hospital, which I felt we'd done a huge disservice to her. But she did want to go home for a few days just to see how it was. To get her home meant having someone staying overnight because her parents were very frightened of being there on their own, giving medications in the middle of the night, worrying that they were doing the wrong thing, even though we'd talked through that and tried to support them and give them information. And of course, you can phone anytime. But what was lovely was someone in the community and this whole community, by the way, had come together at diagnosis, done a huge fundraising effort to find out different treatment, alternative treatments, as well as conventional treatments. So this community was very involved already in a small place. And one of the neighbors was a nurse and stayed the night with the family so she could go home, and just gave that security. Someone drove Judy home in their great big car. Someone else was walking the dog. Someone else was doing the meals and things. There's this really fantastic community effort, because what we had tried to promise was an overnight nurse, which we had to scrabble around to try and fund. And there just wasn't a nurse available, because so many people have left nursing since COVID. So just having that community support made a massive difference to this family to get Judy home and get her, with her dog and cat, who then came into the hospital anyway. But it was just a really wonderful community effort that just horrible circumstances, tragic circumstances in so many ways, but just lifted everyone. And so very heartening to see. And so even with us, with the best will in the world as a hospital service, trying to provide a community service, we kind of fell short, we couldn't draw upon resources. So I think that was just a really lovely example of people pulling together.
Yeah, that's a great story.
Mm.
My story, I think, well, it started in hospital. Again, someone with cancer, a man with cancer, and getting, very good care. But he'd always wanted, by preference, he knew he'd rather come home. In hospital, he was using more and more narcotics, and he was spending more and more time asleep. And to him, that wasn't how he hoped he might go. I mean, everyone different imaginations of how it might be. So his partner said, I want to bring him home. And we talked about it. And we talked about setting up, if possible, the 5 or 10 people who might be available. And we had talked about that when his diagnosis was first made. So he did come home in an ambulance, and the ambulance carried him down the 47 steps, which some people said, oh, well, you can't go home because it's inaccessible. These rules are put in our way. One of the interesting things that happened is that once he got home, his narcotic dependency or need, I shouldn't say dependency, but the amount of painkilling and sedation that he required was much less, because it's a mind-body event, like everything. And when he felt comfortable, he felt very safe in hospital, but it hadn't been his plan. But it was marked how much his narcotic intake reduced, and therefore how much more open he was to his older children and his grandchildren. They could come in, he would be lively, they would laugh, they would joke. Humor is, as we know, a very great medicine. And then it came the issue of the night time, which is always the issue, but with the 10 people, they could get a bit of a roster going. And of course, they had to learn how, at the later stage, how to do the injections into the driver, which is a bit of a leap for many people, steep learning curve. I think we've sent some resources around, and under medical supervision, caring at home is a wonderful resource. They're based in Queensland, in Brisbane. And one of the problems with health services is that they'll offer you a volunteer, but because of the rules and regulations and compliance, they're not allowed to inject the painkillers in the night. But someone who is in the social group is allowed to. And it really, I'm thinking of another death where no one really wanted to do it, but there was an apprentice electrician, was one of the sons. He said, well, that's fine, it looks simple to me. The nurse has drawn up the syringe. Where do I put it in there? And I squirt it in. Doesn't sound difficult to me. And after that, everyone wanted to have a go. And that's this steep learning curve that occurs once people demystify the process of looking after someone who's dying.
I think that's a really big word, isn't it? Demystify. A big, not big in letters, but big in this whole thing is a mystery. For so many people, which they think they can't do it.
Well, we can do it. We can do it. Not for everyone. Not for everyone. And it's going to take time. It's going to take time to get that.
I also do want to say that dying in hospital is not a failure. And often, and I'll say this to people, who couldn't die at home for whatever reason, and it's often because they've got complex symptom control issues. But dying, things usually work out the way they should. And even if it doesn't, even if you don't think so at the time, often in retrospect, when I've spoken to people, they're really glad that someone died in hospital, because they wouldn't have been able to manage it at home, or they just the trauma of something, or so dying in hospital is not a failure. It's not like we should say that dying at home is the pinnacle of everything. But certainly more people are dying in hospital than need to.
It's interesting, isn't it, the bookends of life, that when people used to die at home in Australia, and still in Holland, it's the norm rather than not the norm, but the comment that, that if they have to be transferred to hospital to have their baby, that's a failure. Well, no, it's not a failure. But it's interesting how those two ends of life have so many similarities. If you prepare, as long as you've got a good midwife. I mean, in that preparation, we shouldn't forget to mention the doulas, who can transform the situation, or even someone who has experience of death and dying, and for whom it is not a mysterious process. It's a normal process, but we should remember the doulas, and we should remember the aged care facilities as well.
Yeah.
Which again, it's not a failure to go into an aged care facility. And there is the awareness in there of death and dying over my career has changed dramatically. Samad, you just wrote an editorial to some degree about residential aged care, and I think you hit the mark when you said dying patients need to be cared about, not just cared for. And this is very much what I observe in aged care facilities due to all the pressures of workforce. Is they're cared for very well, but they're not cared about. And that's where community, it's not a broad care, it's meeting the needs, but not meeting the broader needs of community. It's very much more in the 95-5. And 50% of people in aged care facilities never get a visit year round. Samar, I see you maybe adding something to this. You're the one that wrote the editorial.
Well, I mean, it's really based on the evaluation of palliative care and aged care facilities in Western Australia. And I mean, we found out that palliative care is really improving the quality of, I mean, nothing new, but of course, it came very clearly from bereaved carers saying that those who have had palliative care, loved one has palliative care, they really felt the better quality of care that was given to them compared to those. So obviously, we're advocating for a lot more of that education for residential aged care facilities. But of course, what the bereaved carers are saying is that it's not a home for their residents. It's I mean, it's just a workplace for the workforce. And they really want to make it, I mean, that ethos of hospice that we kind of had in the past, we still dream about, needs to be in an aged care facility. And open it up for the community to sort of be part of helping you look after those residents when it comes to their personhood. This is where people basically, they lose their personhood when they are in a residential aged care facility, because they're not treated. I mean, I'm sort of not really sort of generalizing, but of course there are some places doing really great, but in general, from the the people, about 300 who answered the survey, they just felt like their loved ones are a number there, and again, it's because of that silos of funding that we have everywhere, that it's the care is transactional. It's not really, that's for that, we're doing what we can for the people, but we're not about the people. This is what was coming through. The bereaved carers were saying in the qualitative feedback in those surveys. And this is where, one of the qualities of care is person-centered care.
Mm.
And that didn't come through as really a strong thing in residential aged care facilities in WA. Is it better somewhere else? Again, I don't know. I hear the same stories everywhere, basically, where I have sort of family and friends. And this is what we're trying to sort of bring back, that sort of look at this person, if you can, as a as a person, with somebody who's had a really great past. They've done a lot for the community themselves. So just because they've got dementia, and they've lost the way they can really speak and behave, it doesn't mean that they don't matter anymore. They matter to their families. So we're leaving those bereaved carers with a lot of grief before the person dies, with the way they feel they are treated in residential aged care homes. And of course, after, I mean, the fact that you have to vacate the bed within 24 hours of the person dying, I mean, they're still sort of trying to, come to terms with the death happening, but yet they have to go and, immediately clear that room and sort of make it, vacant for the next one waiting on the list. I mean, from an economic perspective, yes, that's understood. But I mean,
I'm going to come in there and give an example of someone who said, I couldn't
sure.
bear for this to happen. And so I said to them, well, you can call the funeral directors and they will pick you up from the aged care facility and they will bring you home. And it was a wonderful experience because that person stayed at home with a cooling mat. It was winter, and so you can mix and match to some degree. You can get home, but again, you need to plan for it, and you need to be aware of what your choices and what your rights are.
I'm just going to interrupt and just recognizing that we've only got a few minutes and that there are a few questions that people have along the way. Terry, you've been having your hand up for quite some time, so I'm going to go to you first. Thank you for your patience on that. What was you're on mute at the moment, Terry?
Yeah, look, I don't think there's a one size fits all. I mean, I think in the exercise of compassion, our focus is really what would be most helpful for the person that's dying and those around them. And the exercise of wisdom in that is extremely important. So hospital might be the right place, home might be the right place, hospice might be the right place, community palliative care. I think one of the things that my experience in the hospital system is there is a mindful attention to the interdisciplinary kind of skills involved. And in animating community networks, that not all of those things are attended to, and somebody is, it's really helpful if there can be somebody with a mindfulness to the different things that are needed. Because in a hospital, for instance, or in a hospice, families are released from a lot of the caring duties so that they can actually be present and, be a wife or be a partner or, be a support without having to worry about those sorts of things. So I think, each situation will be different. The exercise of wisdom in that will be different. And the mindfulness about gathering either a professional multidisciplinary team or seeing how home-based palliative care can be complementary to what the medical professions offer and what the local community networks can offer. And I think it's also important that in exercising that wisdom, we don't assume that if people already have cultural or religious networks in place, that they may be the best for them. Even the 5 or 10 family members that they might call on might not be the right people. So my experience often as a hospital or spiritual carer was that, if a person is dying or incredibly well, they often don't want people from their religious community to be there because they're not perhaps able to be supportive or honest in the way that they actually want. So I think if we keep bringing it back to the person that's dying and their families, we listen and we're really truly responsive and want to respond to them, but we need to exercise a wisdom and a kind of a comprehensive complementary nature about how we extend that care so that it can be truly helpful. You may not want your mother-in-law or your mother, there being the person. And, I think we need to keep coming back to what's most helpful, and that will vary from person to person and context to context.
I agree, Terry. And if I'm any part of dying at home, I'll always say I don't think that the close family should have anything to do with, unless they want to, the actual work of looking after. They should be there in a social role, not in a changing nappies or changing sheets. I think that's absolutely essential, which is why I say 10 people, because if you've got 10 people, then it leads to the ability for the family to actually hold the hand and grieve and walk and come back and be normal people. Some want to do that, Terry, but I absolutely agree with you, Terry. The family should not have to do the work that in a hospital is done by the dozens of workers.
Just reflecting on that, Stephen, with Sama's research is that if the people could mobilise 10 friends, why aren't they there in the aged care facility to actually provide that support? Why are they reliant on the aged care staff to do it, for instance?
They're not reliant. Oh, sorry, Steve. No, they're not reliant. They're not allowed to. All that risk management stuff, that happens. They want to, and they want to bring somebody to help care for, their loved one losing their denture and their glasses, and then of course they can't see, they can't eat, and then nobody can find this stuff. But if they can have more people come and help. But this is the system that's not working in favor of the community. They're not allowed to. All that risk management is just really killing community kind of
involvement. It is absolutely, but and I take on what you're saying as well, Stephen and Terry. Thank you, and it's nice to see you again, Terry. People should be allowed to do what they want to do, but sometimes people are surprised by doing things they didn't think they wanted to do, and it just calls to mind someone who washed their mother's body after she died, and just the profound experience of that. And never in a million years did she think that she would be, partake in something like that. But the profound experience of washing their mother's body for the last time and, being supported in that, the reverence of that as a closing of a part of that life was extraordinarily profound. So I think, like we're saying, you do what you're comfortable with. Being pushed sometimes is not always a bad thing, because something surprising and profound might arise from that. And I was just thinking about the last person I saw this morning who's heading for a nursing home, but something acute has happened and she might not actually get there. All she wants is her dog. And we're in this massive hospital, and she's so distraught with everything that's happening. All she wants is Coco. And so I've just gone outside and said, well, we'll see what we can do, and we'll see if we, it's just ridiculous what I'm having to go through. And but we can move your bed outside because it's too hard to put her in a wheelchair, and we can get your dog to come with your son and meet you outside, and all these. And then I just went outside and said, can you get the dog to come to the wall? Yeah. It's the most important thing to this woman, with all of these things that are happening, is that Coco comes and visits her, and there is compassion there that's happy to break the rules and bring the dog up the back stairs. And I'm going to have to pretend I'm not talking about the Gold Coast University Hospital now, but that simple act is such a massive component of this lady's care, and particularly if she is dying now. And the fun police are out there and stop us doing things and all sorts of risk management, as you say, Samar, but there's compassion almost has to be secret in a way in hospital sometimes, and this act of compassion from nurse, senior nurse, and then to allow this dog to come in and visit this lady is just, it's just really touched me in a bureaucratic system, which health is, which government is, which everything is, that compassion does lead the way.
Yep. In that resource, Bringing Our Dying Home,
Mm,
there's a theme in there. The ordinary becomes extraordinary.
mm,
And then they use the word stronger, closer, deeper, warmer. And I
mm,
think when you do have family around you in an unrestricted
mm,
way, that becomes a possibility. And
mm,
sometimes you can't even find words for what the experience was like. And that can be an experience in hospital or an aged care facility or home.
mm,
Um, uh, Apart from anything else, of course, fiscally, we won't be able to afford to have everyone die in hospital or aged care facilities. So we better start planning for home sooner rather than later.
Mm.
I'm just having trouble. I can't see the chat, so I don't know if there's questions coming up, Gian. Sorry.
There is
There we go.
Julianne.
there's no particular questions as such. There's been some comments about services not always being available in some areas, even
Yeah.
though and that it's a bit. I think that goes back to the theme of our lucky dip in that postcode
Mm,
approach that
yeah,
you're talking about, Joe. I just
yeah.
wanted to offer up, just from my own personal experience, that, and I suppose where you say about people being pushed or whatever, we supported Dad to live at home. He died at home. He stayed here until he went to the crematorium. And that was very unusual, it seems, to have that whole home experience. And that's simply because we
Mm,
just did what we wanted him to do. And in that, though, it was such as you say, it can be profound. And I often don't have words for it. But he let us love him and he let us love him in all his vulnerability. And whether that was taking him to get a shower or whether that was washing his body after he died, but being the person that
mm,
sat with him as he took his last breath um, is been a pivotal point in my life. And
mm,
what it did for our family to come together was very, very healing. And in that, it
mm,
actually means that I think we've come through that, or we see that journey with a lot of love and a lot of blessings and lots of gold in amongst the black. I often say,
mm,
um, um, but there's sadness, but there's no profound grief because we actually had a journey together that was incredibly beautiful. Um,
mm,
and I think that that's something that we need. And there was support. Our local GP helped out, being
mm,
the person that enabled us, I suppose, to for him to stay at home. And the community palliative care team came out and was able to give us some information about Stephen, like how do you use this, you know,
mm,
that morphine stuff. I mean,
mm,
and I was the person that was given some information about how to do that. And I said, yes, I would. And you do need somebody to step up and say yes. And I needed my mum to be able to say, yes, you can be that. That's okay. So I think though what I'm wanting to share with that is that it is a collective um,
mm,
caregiving team that's needed, but community can and do this. And we've seen it in our community since that we've had multiple people who have lived and died at home or have died in hospice and come back home afterwards. But as a
mm,
community, we've developed more as a skill set around and the ability to be able to support each other so that as soon as we know someone's unwell, everyone just steps up, whether it's the social or the meal trains or the transport as someone's, well, we're still actively living, and then, or whether it's actually supporting someone to actually die on their property, because I live in a country area. Um,
mhm,
that's what's really important to people. So I think that it's important that we have stories where we do know from a community perspective that we can do this. And that services can provide that support and supplement what community skills that we have. So I am mindful of our time is as at an end. I'm also mindful that Kath, you've been doing a bit of illustrating of this conversation as we go through. Is that right?
I can just quickly share my note taking if you like.
Oh, lovely.
I'll just open up the window for you.
Because it's been a long conversation and many things, but it's nice when someone can capture that together. So thank you, Kath.
It's sometimes nice just to see someone's been listening and some of the main points that come out. There's a lot to capture there and some really beautiful messages, but these are just a few that stood out. Sometimes I just can't write quick enough when I hear some of the things coming through.
Isn't that great?
Wow, that's beautiful.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Such a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah.
I had to add the bit about Shakespeare tragedies in there because I thought that was great. Death literacy does sound a little bit like that, doesn't it? It sounds like something at school.
Yeah.
The one lesson you really don't want to go to.
Yeah, that's it. That
should not be how it is at all.
And
I think you've nailed it.
Yeah, I think what you've captured, Kath, is that interconnectedness, but the in some ways the messiness of it all, but also the beauty of it all. Somehow in amongst that, we still find a place that we can rest where there is where we can be stronger, closer, warmer, and better. So so thank you everyone for joining us today. Particular thanks, of course, Stephen and Joe for the conversation, and really appreciate that. Stephen and Joe and Samar, who have all spoken here, are obviously directors of the Compassionate Communities Australia, and the team will be giving you the link to this conversation. With Kath's permission, we might be able to share her imagery as well, and some of the extra resources that Stephen's identified that people might find useful. We hope this is the start of a conversation. There is the forum happening in Brisbane on September 9. Should anyone be available and want to attend, that will be a great opportunity to meet with both Joe and Stephen and Samar and others that are particularly passionate about community-led approaches to caring, dying and grieving. So thank you, everyone.
I don't want to come in at the last minute, but this one didn't make it. A Good Life to the End by Ken Hillman.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
We'll
really
add that
great read.
Yeah.
Add that in. And just a last word to everyone. If you just start by having the conversation with 5 people, have you got my back?
Yeah.
Can I have your back? We'll start it happening.